Off is a game that has stood the test of time with a very long-lasting fandom. Even though I'm one of its biggest fans, I didn't play it until 2023, just about a year ago. One of the main reasons people stick around is because of the game's many secrets and the many fan games around it. Several people have formatted an Iceberg for a lot of these, but I found a lot of these don't really encapsulate all of the glory that Off and the fan games have. So I decided to take it upon myself and make a definitive Iceberg for both Off and fan games. This was entirely made by myself. All of the entries are serious, and I know what they mean. There's 8 total layers, varying from common knowledge intended for casual players to some of the deepest secrets in some of the most obscure fan games. With all of that said and done, let's dive into the Iceberg. Layer 1. Killing the judge in Zone 0. It's possible to ignore the tutorial and kill the judge in Zone 0. Doing so will give some special dialogue, and shortly after cause the game over. Sugar. Sugar, or Sucre, is a secret boss in Zone 0. You need at least one grand item and her cellar will open up. The boss has very high stats, but is very weak to poison. Upon defeat, she drops 30,000 XP and gives a grand item of her own. Panic in Ballville, the comic in Chapter 2 of The Room. This part of the game is heavily critiqued for making no sense at all. It means very little in the lore of the game. 2.0 and 3.0 translations. The main 2 translations for Off. 2.0 is largely considered to be the better, despite mistranslations and gameplay differences. I personally play on the 3.0 translation, but pick whichever one you prefer. Zachary is unkillable. Zachary is the only character in Off that can't be fought, and it can be assumed he doesn't die. Several fan games have had Zachary as a boss, mostly with 2 wings and a sword. Mortis Ghost isn't French. He isn't. He's Belgian. Translation errors. I mentioned the 2.0 version has some translation errors, but the main one is in Chapter 1 of The Room. The Queen states Hugo is the son they brought into the world, when in reality, Hugo brought them into the world. I have run out of oxygen. A book in Zone 2 says this and only this in crude handwriting. As for who breathes oxygen, we don't know. Fan games. Off has had a load of fan games made for it. Some short, some long. I'll cover them all in depth later, but the one I recommend the most is Home. By far the most popular Off fan game. It takes place as the judge after his ending, and it focuses on him warning the Guardians about what's to come. The game is really good, and I'd highly recommend playing it. Space Apes. A secret ending only available by getting all 5 grand items and trading them for the Ares card. After the credits are done, you see a cutscene with the Space Apes about building a giant robot factory to defeat the flying brains from planet Oris. It's not meant to make sense. Off 2. You can ask an Elson in Zone 2 if there's going to be an Off 2. He'll simply reply, What are you talking about? Hip 2-2. The most popular track unused from the OST. It's unknown where it would have played or why it even went unused in the first place. The one thing we do know is that it's a damn good song. Color of Fear is useless. I think this one explains itself. The color of field gives no stat increase. Purified zones. One of, if not the creepiest parts of the game. After a zone is cleared, it enters a purified state. All of the color is white, all the Elson are gone, and the only enemies are called secretaries who attack by screaming and can easily wipe your party out if you're unprepared. At the end of each is a grand item. Layer 2. Not Earthbound inspired. Off was actually not inspired by Earthbound. Mortis hadn't played it by the time he made the game. This is pretty common knowledge nowadays, but it's still worth mentioning. Batter is a lesbian. Mortis confirmed that the Batter was a lesbian despite him being a man. Don't think about this one too hard. Ashley Bat does less damage than the cat Cheerio Bat. This is actually true. I don't know how Mortis made this slip up, but it barely matters because 99% of the time you'll probably still take the Ares card anyway for the secret ending. Bad Batter. This is the enemy version of the Batter. It's his name in the files, and it's what the community called him. Mortis confirmed that this is not a separate entity from the Batter, but simply how the receivers of his purification view him. r/off the game. The main off subreddit. It's surprisingly quite active despite being dedicated to a 16-year-old game, and it has some nice people. Hugo Coma Theory. This is a popular fan theory that states Hugo is in a coma and only dreams the events of Off. I'll link the theory in the description. Unused songs. Aside from Hip 2-2, there's a lot of unused songs for Off. There's Multi-Tap Relay Nightmare, Outside Flesh Fountains, Something in the Way, Spool, and Tense. Some of these are pretty popular among fangames and are used frequently. Speaking of fangames, Confinium. Probably the most popular unfinished fangame. It follows the story of an Elson known simply as the Pilot, who needs to go to zones Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto for a mission of his. It's pretty good. I'd recommend it. CSR. Continue Stop Rise, or CSR for short, is another popular fangame. It follows the Batter with two alternative Batters, the Bad Batter and Ghost Batter, on their way to purify heaven from the specters. This one's also a pretty good one and has some great visuals. Unknown. Unknown is yet another fangame and still quite popular. It follows Zachary on a goal to destroy the Zodiac cards due to them being useless now that the world is purified, but soon runs into a creature known as Seneca. The fangame isn't really as good as the ones before it, but it's still alright. Tan Blake. A very talented animator who is making an animated adaptation of Off. They're currently working on episode 3, but they have been for 3 whole years, so don't expect much activity. Homestuck Correlation. A lot of Off fans back in the day came to it because of Homestuck. The game wasn't referenced in it at all, but there was a huge break in the time Homestuck comics were being made, so many fans flocked to other things to pick up interest in, and one of those was Off. I recommend watching Sagan Hawk's video for more details on this matter. Markiplier playthrough. Ignore the fact this is misspelled on the Iceberg. Markiplier made a full playthrough of Off, giving the game a large attraction. That's about all there is to this entry. Pepper Steak is misspelled. In the soundtrack for the game, Pepper Steak is misspelled as Prepare Steak, with only 2 P's. New and New DF. Both of these are Off fangames, centered around a different batter trying to stop a group of 4 people from purifying the world. I think it's a pretty good fangame, but the definitive version has a lot of sexual content in the second zone, so definitely watch out for that. Off's Cult. Off's fandom is a cult meant to worship everything about the game except for the combat, and praise the Lord Mortis for giving us mortals a holy piece of the heavens itself. Frog King. One of the books in the library in Zone 2 mentions the tale of a Frog King slaying a beast. This Frog King is highly theorized to be Zachary, due to his mask looking much like a frog. Elson name origin. The Elson were originally not named that officially. The fandom decided to name them Elson due to the monorail sign in the first area you encounter them, and our god on earth Mortis Ghost decided to make it official. Meaning of his tears in-game. There's actually a bit in the meaning of his tears in-game that isn't heard in the soundtrack version, though it does sound similar to the piano version just before the main leitmotif starts. Here's what it sounds like. README file contains puzzle solutions. Well, it's only one puzzle, but it still counts. The README file included in the game actually has the solution to the Zone 3 controller puzzle. Zachary will tell you about it if you give him the music box dropped by the pastel burn. Pepper Steak leitmotif. The drum leitmotif in Pepper Steak appears in many songs throughout the soundtrack. Most of them are combat songs due to it being a drum leitmotif. Some of the other songs that use leitmotifs are Yesterday Was Better using the 14 Residents leitmotif, and O Rosto Deum Assassino using leitmotifs from many Zone 3 songs. Fangames not recommended to be made. In the README file, Mortis says he wouldn't like fangames to be made as he has a backstory he'd like to exploit to the core. He's done very little with the IP of Off ever since its inception, and seemingly doesn't care for them being made anymore. Sugar is trans. Mortis Ghost confirmed in the 15th anniversary stream that Sugar was transgender. It was mostly an in-the-moment thing, as he said, "Why not?" to a viewer asking if she was trans. Critic Burnt. One of the darkest parts of the game by a landslide. The Critic Burnt is a rude awakening to anyone who believes the batter is completely Justin's ways. He kills an innocent person for no reason other than that he was in the way of the monorail. Felix's death. I wanted to save this one until the end of the layer because it's a pretty heavy topic. Aaron Felix Mullins, the creator of Home, got in a fatal car accident on March 4th of 2017. It's very sad to see him go, and we all hope he's resting peacefully. Home Reminisce. A while after Felix's death, one of Home's main composers, Sampling Kid, decided to make remixes of all his tracks for Home as an album to honor his work for Home, as well as a unique track dedicated to Felix. Layer 3. Sugar is trans. I accidentally put this one on the Iceberg twice. Whoops. Music box chest. If you save the music box from the pastel burnt, you can use it in the room to get a secret chest with a powerful weapon for add-ons. Pipe minigame hard mode. If you go back into the pipe after doing it once, you'll be given only 45 seconds to get the 10 add-ons instead of the usual 90. If you complete the hard mode, you'll get one of each orb at the bottom of the pipe. Killing Enoch in Phase 1. It's entirely possible to kill Enoch in Phase 1 of this fight, but he has 99,999 health, meaning it takes a while. For reference, the actual battle with Enoch only has 7,000, less than a tenth of this behemoth's health pool. Enoch doesn't grow. Enoch is one of the 4 humans in the world, and humans can't really do this. So it's been confirmed that the only thing that changes is the perspective, making Enoch look more menacing and larger than he actually is, despite him wearing himself out. Ghost Batter. As mentioned, this was a character that was in CSR, but he actually appeared in a few other fan games such as Unknown. I can't imagine a fate more ironic than his, doomed to become the creature he sought out to destroy from the very beginning. Truly a Shakespearean tragedy. Sincere Deceit. I've been waiting a while to talk about this one. Sincere Deceit is an off fan game centered around the batter and his trust between 2 gods swaying him in 2 separate paths. It's a very long but very good fan game, and I highly recommend it for anyone looking for off fan games. We'll be covering this one a few more times on the Iceberg. It has a lot of secret content. Biblical allusions. The game has many allusions to the Bible. One of the most obvious is the add-ons being labeled Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Another obvious one is the names of each guardian being biblical names. All of them are related to Noah, and Enoch was actually named after a removed book from the Bible. Zachary Sprite headcanons. Many headcanons for Zachary's battle sprite are very similar. It's usually him with a sword and 2 small detached wings, holding the sword in one hand. I'm not sure why this sprite is so commonly agreed upon for a battle sprite to him, but I don't mind. I think it's pretty cool. Batter is neutral. According to Mortis, the batter's morality is whatever the player interprets it as, making him about as neutral as possible. Yes, I did say he killed an innocent person because he was on the tracks, but that's what the radical left wants you to believe. They want you to feel guilty about their actions, and I will not stand for that. /J if it wasn't obvious enough. Allegria comparison. A lot of people have compared the art style of Off to Allegria art, most commonly the other artwork by Mortis Ghost, like this one for example. Inter Extra Intra Add and BX Execute. These are both fan games that are prequels and sequels to CSR respectively. Intra Extra Intra Add is a fan game that takes place just after the switch is pressed, and is much more like Yumi Nikki than it is Off. It's more so just Yumi Nikki set in the world of Off. BX Execute is a very modern and refined fan game that takes place after CSR and has some very unique combat, having that of an action RPG. Both of these are definitely worth checking out if you enjoyed CSR. They're a lot of fun. Bandit, a popular fan game character, an Elson with an eye patch on their left eye. He's commonly the merchant for whenever Zachary isn't, and he first debuted in Unknown. Dedan said a slur. In the 2.0 translation, Dedan called the batter retarded. This was quite obviously changed in the 3.0 version, but what the fuck, translators? Off Mix, a pretty popular fan song by Gur aka Cheeser, who you might recognize as one of the developers for One Shot. It combines the elements of several songs in the OST, and it's an absolutely amazing song. I highly recommend you listen to it. Floor 87666. If you go to floor 87666 in Shajahada, Zachary will reward you by giving you a Taurus orb. Not very many people knew this existed, myself included, until a few months ago. It's a pretty well-hidden secret. Zachary's masks. Zachary has quite a few masks under his name. There's the iconic frog mask, and of course the cat mask to imitate the judge. There's also the many masks he has in fan games, such as the shit-eating grin mask in New, as well as the owl mask in Confinium. Papyrus inspired by Dedan. Toby Fox confirmed that Papyrus has several inspirations from Dedan, both in the final product and unused. His old personality was much closer to Dedan, but the new one still has quite a few traces of this inspiration left behind. Chapter 1 Narrator. In Chapter 1 of The Room, someone will narrate the batter and the queen's dialogue. It's completely unknown who this narrator is, and it's led to many fan theories. It's likely not Hugo, since his talking would be much more childish. It's likely not the judge, because it would be much more verbose. So who the hell is it? The most likely candidate is Zachary, as that's what most theories tend to point to. Pastel Burnt is nearly immortal. The Pastel Burnt itself is nearly unkillable unless you kill the other faces in this mouth. The wiki doesn't say exactly how much health they have, but it's likely 99,999 because Enoch and Japhet have that health in their unkillable phases. I did not know this on my first playthrough. I spent a lot of time on this fight. Zachary and Sugar are related. Sugar's dialogue after she's defeated mentions that she has some sort of relation with Zachary, asking the batter to say goodbye to her. When talking to Zachary in Zone 0 again, he'll say, "I guess it's better like that," without making his iconic laugh. You also get some freaking awesome loot. Off Fan. A fan album about Off made by Seb Does Music. It remixes a ton of tracks from the game, and it's a very good album. I recommend you listen to it. Looping Room in Pure Zone 3. The room just before you get the Grand Spectral in Pure Zone 3 loops forever until you go inside one of the doors in there. It's a completely white plane of nothingness, and it's actually a great way to farm secretaries for levels, especially considering it's Pure Zone 3. Max credits. The maximum amount of credits you can have is 999,999. It's likely a hard-coded feature in the engine because no one in their right mind would try such a thing. I am not in my right mind. Suits. An RPG that takes many inspirations from Off, mostly visual. The batter appears as a cameo in the game, though I haven't played it yet, so I don't know where. Layer 4. This layer is mostly related to fan games, so just keep that in your mind. Masu. A ghoul in the mall of Zone 2. This one is notable because its description reads, "Finally, a boring enemy." Every fan game has an ACC song. As far as I'm aware, this is entirely true. The only exception I've found is 2 Days, which is only like 2 minutes long and only has 3 songs in total. If someone can list a fan game that doesn't have an ACC song and is more than 5 minutes long, then I'll update the Iceberg and remove this entry. Hugo's father. A character completely unknown on who he is. We know his mother is the queen, but who's his father? People have assumed it's the batter, but that was a mistranslation, and Mortis confirmed the batter didn't exist until the game was opened up. So, who is he? We'll never know. CSR TV Tropes page. For some reason, CSR has a page on TV tropes. I have no idea why. Martlet is inspired by Japheth. In a similar vein to Papyrus, Martlet from Undertale Yellow is heavily inspired by Japheth. They're both birds given the duty to protect the area they guard, and they both have their final showdown on the top of a building. Home-inspired one-shot. Night Margin, the main developer of One Shot, was close friends with Felix and even got her own boss in the developer boss rush. Something most one-shot players don't know is that the game was directly inspired by Home. The refuge was inspired by Zone 4, being a primarily red area with the main goal being to reach a library and the top of a tower, though the tower and library are together in Home and separate in One Shot. A few of the glitchy parts in One Shot were inspired by the part in the courtroom, and this last one has major spoilers for both games. Skip to this time if you don't want to see it. The ending for Solstice is visibly similar to the ending of Home, a slow camera panning through the world being restored. The majority of one-shot players don't know about its inspiration from Home, so I figured it was important to mention here. However, a fan game centered around an unnamed Elson and their perspective of the events of Off. It's very similar in gameplay and only really differs in the story. They trail just behind the batter in his actions, and he even has a very unique achievement system where progressing through the game lets you know more about the lore through short poems. A very unique fan game that's worth checking out. Zachary's Face. This one should be pretty obvious, but Zachary's face is never seen, and it's completely unknown what it is. Several people have made assumptions and headcanons on what his face could look like, but my personal favorite is that it's just a bottomless series of masks like that one bit of SpongeBob where he hides behind all of the paintings. Elson clones. According to Mortis, the reason why the Elson are populating the world is because there was a scientist before the world went to shit who cloned himself enough times to take over the world. He was pretty vague if it was canon or not, so take this with a grain of salt. Esprit. Believe it or not, E-Spirit is actually misspelled as Esprit in the menu. I didn't even know about this until researching for this Iceberg. 1. A very large in-progress fan game around the same length as Home. You play as Doe, Zachary's created life form after the events of Off, on a goal to search for him after you find him missing. It's honestly one of my favorite fan games, up there with Home and Syndic. I highly recommend this one. Start. Another fan game that centers around an Elson in Zone 2 named Elm. They traverse Zones 4, 5, and 6 to find a zone that's safe. It's a pretty short fan game, so if you got time to kill, I think it's alright. Syndic's Boss Rush. In the outside area of Sincere Deceit, which will be covered later, you'll find a tower with Zachary watching the TV. There's a lot of doors that lead to a buffed version of all the major bosses you fought in the game, and once killing them all, a door in the middle will open up to a unique final boss. After killing that boss, you'll get the best bat in the game, as well as unlocking a true boss rush that forces you to fight all of them in a row, with an additional super boss at the end. Dedan is a mutant. Mortis confirmed that Dedan is a mutant who got affected by the cow bite in the room. As for how he mutated that quickly, I don't know. But what's important is that we have confirmation that Dedan was once human. Queen sent the Spectres. This is a very likely theory that the Queen is the one who sent the Spectres to destroy the world without telling her guardians. Enoch states that she was the one who sent them, but considering Enoch isn't the most virtuous character, I wouldn't put him past him to lie. He clearly has a grudge against the Queen. Chop Shop. The Chop Shop, as it's informally called, is an optional area in Sincere Deceit, specifically the prison. It's very dark, even down to the music, which is just a bunch of loud screaming. There's some very unethical stuff going on down there, and I'd rather not talk about it. Sub 1 hour. The current off speedrun world record is 1 hour, 1 minute, and 22 seconds, very close to being under an hour. The world record holder, Kiyoshi Kadre, has said that a sub 1 hour is very possible, but has never been achieved. The world record is over 3 years old, so it's unlikely he'll ever get it. It's unfortunate to see such a monumental barrier likely never get broken. Elson's disease. According to Mortis, the Elson look the way they are because of a disease the scientist had. It's still unknown if they were once human, but if a disease is all it takes to classify people as non-human, I don't think they were human in the first place. Some fan games, notably Home, elaborate on this concept quite a bit more. 2 Days. 2 Days is an incredibly short off-fan game centered around a hungover batter waking up in an Elson named Vance's home in an unknown zone and destroys the zone's only source of food, causing the Elson to kill themselves. It's a very strange fan game, don't question it. Beyond Elson. Beyond Elson is yet another incredibly short fan game, based around an alternate path in Zone 1. The batter then runs into the original Elson, who tries to stop him from pulling the switch. New Plus. A scrapped remake of the original New that was removed in place of the definitive version. I imagine it was largely the same in concept, but the devs realized they were doing it kinda wrong, so they scrapped it and restarted it from new. Can you get it? Shachihata, the character. In the fan game Home, some of the areas in Zone 1 are actual characters. The two main ones are Pentel, an early game boss, and Shachihata. Shachihata has some very dark and tragic lore. He was a worker for Zone 1 in the industry named after him. Eventually, he hopped on a cargo tram to move to Zone 4, dissatisfied with the work there. He soon realized this zone was worse, as there was a disease ravaging throughout the zone. Wanting to know more, he sought the library for information, realizing the disease was a creature, desiring control in this anarchist zone. Having the same motivation, he attempted to spread it, creating a weapon for it, attaching it to himself. He was ready to take over the zone, but the day his march began, the judge was ready to take over the zone for himself. Rise. Yet another off-fan game. This one made in RPG Maker VX Ace, the current most modern RPG Maker version. It's centered around an Elson named Cinnamon gathering other Elson to lead a revolution for the workers. It's very good visually, but can be very hard in terms of gameplay. Definitely recommend it. Silence and Gray Pencil. 2 songs that play in the room. Most people haven't heard of these songs as they aren't included in most versions of the soundtrack. They were added later on with their custom soundtrack extensions. Search. A much longer fan game than the previous few. It focuses on Sugar exploring the zones, searching for Zachary. They trace behind the batter's actions and never finds him in the 3 zones, but perhaps the room. It's quite long and I'm not really a fan of it, but if you're interested in it, you can check it out. The zones are extremely far apart. According to the judge, the nothingness allows you to travel at light speed. If that's true, then it means the zones are extremely far apart. They're even farther than the circumference of the Earth, as light is able to circle it in 1/7 of a second. I think this is some very interesting world building, considering how strange the game's world is. Layer 5. Zachary owns the mall and park. A small piece of trivia that a lot of players will actually miss. Zachary is confirmed by the Elson to own both the mall and the park in Zone 2. Joas and Subterrano. According to Mortis Ghost, Joas and Subterrano are names for Zone 0 and the room respectively. This is never said in-game, and many fans have wondered what the names for these 2 zones are. The room will be discussed in the next layer again, and it is partially related to this name. New Alma Puzzle. On the harder difficulties of New DF, there's an infamous puzzle at the start of Alma that will leave many players completely stuck and unable to progress. The third question, in the end, what symbol do we trust the most, is the one most gets stuck on, as it's very vague. Even I don't know the solution to this puzzle, so if anyone has it, please send it to me. Elsewhere. An in-progress off-fan game. You play as an Elson named Clyde traversing through zones 5 and 6. Don't ask what happened to 4. You play in a world created by a being named Yuko in order to stop a currently unknown threat. This fan game has a lot of potential, and I'd recommend it to kill some time. You sick puppy. If the player is to fail the pipe minigame, either by running out of time or getting hit by 3 specters, they'll be greeted with this text. The minigame will begin again once the dialogue goes away and all of your stats will be refreshed. Because of how easy the minigame is, most people won't even see this. Not Safe Morse Code. Towards the end of Not Safe, the track that plays in the purified zones, we could hear banging on some sort of surface, followed by cries for help. It's highly speculated that this is Morse code and translates to SOS. It doesn't. SOS is ... The banging and not safe is ... which translates either to HEOM or SIOM. I'm not sure if their words are French or if Morse code is different in French, but this is a mystery yet to be solved, by me at least. Gray Pencil Nokia ringtone. While I was scrolling through the comments on the Gray Pencil track, I noticed a lot of them have compared the melody to a Nokia ringtone. I can't personally draw a connection to a specific one, but I definitely feel how it gives off Nokia vibes. Doll. This is a fully completed fangame for off, but the fully completed fangames were on the last layer. Why is this one down here? Well, you need permission to access the Google Drive that houses the files. I have no idea how lenient the developer is with their permission, but having to contact them is a pretty big wall that most people won't bother with, myself included. Zone 2 Water. In the park in Zone 2, one of the Elson will actually call the liquid plastic water. This is very likely just an oversight by either Mortis or the translators, but we never know. It's not told that Elson drink anything. Unload. An unfinished off-fan game made in a modern version of RPG Maker. You follow a ballman known only as E1 to explore the seemingly purified world of Off and find out your purpose there. A very solid fan game. I certainly liked it. Space Apes fit in any media. Around 4 months ago, by the time of writing, a Reddit user by the name of me made a post saying how the Space Apes in the secret ending can fit in just about any piece of media and they'll still fit just as well as they did in Off. I honestly think this is really funny and shows how out of place the secret ending is to this game. Syndeck full joke credits. In one of the joke endings for Sincere Deceit, some joke credits will partially roll, but they never fully appear in the ending, and the rest are left in the files. Here's the full credits. Crew. Director, Todd Phillips. Producer, Todd Howard. Executive producer, Todd Rundgren. Writer, George R.R. Martin. Executive writer, Hideo Kojima. Music, Johann Sebastian Bach. Sound design, Me and My Microphone. Lead artist, Andrew Husey. Artist, Andrew Dobson. Lead designer, Zidzisia Bexin School. Prop manager, Your Mom Lamau. Makeup, a clown. Executive makeup, the clown's boss. Stuntman, the clown again. Stunt coordinator, the clown's boss again. Cinematographer, has to remain anonymous. Physical trainer, the batter. Cast, the batter. The batter. The judge, the batter. Daedon, the batter. Japhet, the batter. Enoch, the batter. Queen, the batter. Hugo, the batter. Zachary, the batter. Sugar, the batter. Malachi, Brenda Fricker, Jadon, Edward Scissorhands, Gaius, Montana Max, Adam Sandler, Jericho, Marley, Jessica, Lady, Jado, The Tramp, Javik, Dodger, Roland, Morty Smith, Vanny, Bruce Willis, T-Bone, side note, who the fuck is that? Keanu Reeves, Macy, a horse walked on set, Oda, snuck on set in a box, Glitch, Rien, bride director, Caesar, got lost walking home, Lugosi, asked very nicely, Abraham Lincoln, Zafkiel, Tim Curry, Azathoth. Funny story, we paid a homeless man. By the way, the side note isn't in the credits. Ultimate Off Challenge. In January of 2024, a fat Redditor incel who lives in his mom's basement and drinks Soylent and eats Funko Pops by the name of... Oh, that's me. Uploaded a video where he beat the game of Off with 5 rules. He could not use add-ons as anything other than meat shields, he could not use competence, he could not use items, he could not equip armor, and he could not flee from battle. This took him on an incredibly hard journey, taking him around 6 weeks to fully complete it, although he bended the rules in the residential district by using an item outside of combat, and on Sugar, where he used Belial's meat to cure palsy. Since then, he beat Sugar on a separate save file with these rules, but has yet to clear the residential district. He'll get to it someday. Maybe. Possibly. Batteren Ovo. Ovo is a difficult 2D Flash platformer that you can play on websites like CoolMath. As a reward for beating all 60 levels, you'll get a custom skin based on the batter. It's pretty nice to see him cameo in a game like this, considering they share basically nothing alike. Off Fan Album. A fan album of Off made by the late Felix the Judge. The album uses samples only from Off's songs, and it's a pretty relaxing album. If ambient music is your thing, then I'd recommend listening to it. Daedon is the only Guardian to care about his zone. Yeah, this is true. Every other Guardian wants to destroy their respective zones. Japhet tries to ally with the Spectres to put fear in the townsfolk. Enoch uses the Spectres to create Sugar. Hugo simply accepts his fate. And even the Judge is seen completely abandoning his zone after the tutorial and is never seen there again. Daedon just wants to kill the Spectres to keep his zone clean of impurities. While he may not have the best actions, his intentions are fairly noble, and I respect him for that. Sugar is in a room filled with dead bodies. I saved this one for last for the lair because it's quite dark. If you remember how sugar is made, it's from burning bodies. Sugar's cellar has an abundance of the substance, filling half the room. This is extremely dark once you think about it. A seemingly innocent and scared character casually lives in a room of corpses, and she's the strongest enemy in the game. There's clearly some dark stuff going on in here. You could argue that they're just imports from Zone 3, but why exactly would the Judge or Sugar want them? While it's possible Sugar has an addiction to the substance, I don't think she would keep that much uneaten. There's definitely something up here, and I don't want to figure it out. Layer 6. Purified zones have no atmosphere. In the song Not Safe, you could hear the whispers of Silencio, the Nothingness's track. Why exactly are they here? Is it just to make them seem more scary, or is it something else? My theory is that due to there being no Elson to produce smoke, the atmosphere of the zone fades and the nothingness can be heard occasionally. The Batteren's secretaries likely survived because they can breathe without smoke due to being entities not from the world, and the Elson in Zone 2 survives because the bunker he's in is shielded shut, meaning the smoke can't get out. The nothingness is true depth. When you really put your mind to it, the nothingness is one of the scariest areas in the game. Why does the world map take up only a fourth of the nothingness? Why did the world map scroll up on the side? How come there are flowers with no respective zones? Were they former zones that got destroyed? Hell, why even are the zones surrounded by flowers? There's so much mystery around the area, and we're definitely not going to get some answers unless Mortis is really generous. The brains are a Futurama reference. The flying space brains mentioned in the secret ending could possibly be a reference to Futurama, as that show had a few episodes where flying space brains invaded planets, like the space apes did. I think this is more than likely just a coincidence, but it's definitely possible. Capitalism hatred. Mortis Ghost has a hatred of capitalism and has represented it in Off. Zone 3 is placed in an entirely industrial area with a factory releasing smog into the sky. The elements in Zone 1 are also very obvious allusions to global warming. I'd rather stop here because I don't want this to be a place for political discussion. Silencio whispers. Going back to the nothingness, nearly every whisper in Silencio has not been properly translated or has a common definitive agreement. There's the occasional time you could hear, "I'm glad that you killed me," or "It's good that you killed them," but the vast majority of the whispers are completely untranslated, and considering how old this game already is, likely never will be. The room is a bunker. This is going back to Layer 5. Remember how the room was called Subterrano? Well, Mortis confirmed that the room was actually a bunker. It would honestly make sense. It's entirely gray, and the only forms of organic flora are very weathered and likely to give out any second. But why exactly is it a bunker? What sort of catastrophic event could have happened that the only survivor in a bunker is a diseased child? Once again, one of the incredible mysteries buried deep in this game's lore. Who is Sam? In the in-game soundtrack, many of the songs have subtitles for different versions. An example is Endless Hallway. There's the standard version with no subtitle, the one in Enoch's Hallway subtitled Enoch ? And the combat version titled Elson ? But perhaps the strangest of all is the room with the controller key, which is subtitled Sam ? Who is the title referring to? There's no one in the game named Sam, or even close to the name Sam. My only guess is that this was a cut character, but I think we could have gotten confirmation on that by now, or the title would have been renamed. Other than that, my only guess is the Pastel Burnt's name is Sam, but it's an Elson. They shouldn't have names. Sam has a lot of mystery around it, and much like the last few entries, I don't think we're gonna get answers. Outside. Alright, first of all, every entry from here on out for this layer is purely related to Sincere Deceit. The outside is an optional area, unlocked once the tower is. Upon stepping on the warp area, the map glitches into the original off-map. Entering it, you're greeted with a room chapter card, letting us know this is chapter ? The batter wakes up in a red and black area with a tower in the distance. Finding an NPC with an axe, he'll give it to us if we answer some questions. Once we answer them, we find an intact body in the room to the right, and chopping it open opens a path blocked by a giant. He needs to be fed 3 bodies to move. Finding 3 people to feed him, he moves on and thanks us, and we then encounter a boss fight simply named The Flesh. Killing it, we get a hint for the number puzzle up next, and completing it puts us in the boss rush. It's a pretty spooky area, and Jericho even says so. Red Layer 2. If you're on the red route, Layer 2 of the tower will be very glitchy and eerie. There's a lot of meta scares, and you traverse through corrupted versions of the 3 zones, even with distorted music. My favorite part of this is definitely the Enoch refight. He looks fucking horrifying with just his flesh. Flesh Prison. No, this isn't an Ultra Kill reference. In Zone 2 of the tower's second layer on a red route, a disassembled QR code will appear in one of the rooms in the library. Reassembling it, it leads to a now deleted YouTube video, but using the Wayback Machine, we get this video. This scared the absolute shit out of me the first time I saw it. There's a bunch of one-frame images at the end, but because Wayback Machine tanks my computer, I can't figure them out. Interference. An unused sound in the audio files. It's an incredibly strange and mysterious sound. Here's what it sounds like. Like I said, it's an incredibly strange sound effect, likely unused on purpose. You might notice the random audio pitching in the background and think it's some sort of hidden message, but I tried to use a spectrogram on it and found nothing. The format also doesn't fit an SSTV signal, so that's out of the picture. There's also the whispers in it that need to be translated. I know for a fact they aren't the same as Silencio, so it might have a chance. If we could somehow separate the background noise from the whispers, we would likely be able to solve both of them. For now, though, we can't figure out this mystery. Layer 7. The secretaries are meant to be boxer. This is likely true. If the battle was made from the Panic in Ballville comic, then there's likely to be a boxer. Except no one in the game truly fits that description. No one except... The secretaries are the most likely candidate for who the boxer is. They assume a boxer pose, stand on the left side of the screen, and have some gloves that look somewhat similar to boxing gloves. Unless anyone has a better candidate, I'll be assuming these are the boxer. The Queen's true face. The game implies several times that the Queen has 1,000 faces, yet we only see one in-game, and she looks like she has no face at all. Is this her true face? If not, what is? Even if it is, what do the other faces even look like? The Queen's face will likely remain a mystery for a very long time. The player is insignificant to the lore. Outside of controlling the batter and making the final decision, the player has very little influence on the lore. What if the battle was sovereign? What if the final battle were to happen anyway? Who would win that battle? No matter what the answer to these questions are, they're still going to be very similar to how the game plays out, meaning there is very little impact the player has on the lore. Sugar is the guardian of Zone Zero. I find this a likely theory. All the guardians need to stay in their zone to protect it, and the judge is seen all throughout the game, completely abandoning it. You could argue the zone has no threats on it, but if the batter arrived there, who's to say some other hostile entities couldn't, like secretaries? You could also say the zone isn't purified once Sugar is defeated, as all other zones are, but Sugar isn't purified. She's killed. Her corpse remains in the cellar, eternally rotting, never purified, meaning the zone can't be purified. How did the Sugar get in Zone 0? I touched on this one at the end of Layer 5, but how exactly did the Sugar get in her cellar? Was it an import from Vesper? Did Sugar get it herself? Or maybe, there were once Elson populated in Zone 0, but Sugar killed them all to feast on their corpses. I know it's an edgy theory, sure, but it's the only reasonable one I've got. Valerie is to Japhet as the batter is to the player. Think about it. They're both puppets controlled by a force, one external and the other very internal. They're simply vessels for the puppeteer to do their action, and most notably, the puppets are the ones that get the most attention. Japhet's rage is ignored from the cat he uses as a vessel, and the batter is the one who receives blame for destroying the world, not the player. Layer 8. Note, all of these entries are purely related to Sincere Deceit. Corrupted Arbella. Corrupted Arbella is a very hidden part of Sincere Deceit. After beating all the bosses in the first floor of the outside tower, Jessica will give you a paper. Following the instructions from bottom to top, a secret door will be revealed with an optional queen boss fight. After killing her, you'll unlock a black soul which will allow you to access Corrupted Arbella. The area is utterly horrifying, and I won't spoil very much on the details because there's a ton of secrets in here that are completely mind-blowing. Just know that there are plenty of triggers that crash the game, so make sure to save often. It feels like it shouldn't exist. Completing one of the parts in Corrupted Arbella, you'll get an item simply titled question mark, and the description will be this. There's one in each district, and getting all 4 will unlock the ending for this area. One wrong move or word could erase you forever. A female Elson in the church will say this. The mystery isn't of what they say, because the game crashes a lot in this area, intentionally, but more so how they got there. There's a lot of Elson in the end of the area, but there's none other in here. The only other one is in the industry district, who instantly disappears when talked to. Laughing Gaius. Laughing Gaius is a boss fight in Corrupted Arbella that's meant to be impossible. He has maxed out stats, all elements, uses only Limbo, which does 750 damage to each party member, and every 5 turns he does a third of every party member's health and heals however much damage he dealt to the battle. Easily the hardest boss in any fan game. Do you feel safe? In a hidden area in corrupted Arbella, where Zachary's shop normally is, there's many talking mouths who will say this repeatedly. As far as I'm aware, this area has no point other than just exploration, but these things were indeed correct. I do not feel very safe. At all. Null and void. In the corrupted church, if your name is Smile, you'll find a computer with a singular icon on it. Opening it, a game called Null and Void will open up, with very corrupted versions of each off character, and sacrificing organs will give you some very interesting pieces of lore about the game and world altogether. A unique ending happens if you give up all of your organs. Goodbye forever, until you rot. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. First of all, the elephant in the room. Where the hell have I been? Well, the length of the video should give some explanation. It's by far my longest. But also, my computer broke down halfway through production, losing another 5 weeks of editing. So that's where I've been. All the time I've been working on this video, and I would have released it a lot sooner if my computer didn't break. I promise it won't be as long for the next video. The script's already completed. I won't spoil it, but it does have to do with an off-fan game. My estimate is it's about 30 to 40 minutes long. I think that's all I need to say for the conclusion. Goodbye, everyone. Hopefully not until you rot.